In the lively city of Onitsha, Nena moved quietly around the dining table, placing steaming plates of food before her husband Obiora and his friends. She had cooked since morning, making sure everything looked perfect, hoping that maybe this time he would smile at her. Maybe just this once he would say a kind word. But instead, Obiora leaned back in his chair, smirked and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You are not wife material. I regret marrying you." The words cut through her chest like a sharp blade. She froze for a moment, her hands trembling as she held the serving spoon. Around the table, some of the men chuckled under their breath, as if it was a joke to laugh at. Her cheeks burned, but she kept her head down, hiding the tears stinging her eyes. She wanted to vanish, to melt into the ground, but she stood still, swallowing her pain like she had done so many times before. No one defended her. No one told Obiora he had gone too far. In that moment, Nena realized how small and unwanted he made her feel. Yet deep inside, her heart whispered that this story was not going to end this way. The men around the table could not hold back their laughter. They chuckled and exchanged knowing glances, as if Obiora's words were entertainment for the night. The shame of it made Nena's heart sink lower. She stood quietly by the table, her hands still clutching the tray, when Obiora leaned forward with a mocking smile and added, "A real wife should know how to shine, not dress like a church mouse. Look at her, always dull, always hiding. What kind of woman is this?" His voice dripped with contempt, and the room erupted once more in shallow laughter. Nena lowered her eyes quickly, wishing they wouldn't see the tears fighting to escape. She pressed her lips tightly, forcing a small, polite smile to hide her brokenness. She had dressed carefully that evening, wearing her neat wrapper and blouse, tying her geli in a simple knot. She thought it was respectful, that it was decent. But to Obiora, nothing she did was ever enough. Her chest felt heavy, but she refused to answer him back. She had learned long ago that speaking up only brought more insults. Still inside her she screamed. How much longer could she carry this humiliation? How long could she live in a house where her presence was only a shadow, where her husband took pleasure in turning her into a joke before others? The guests continued their meal, hardly noticing the pain in her eyes. Some of them looked away awkwardly, but none dared to speak in her defense. To them it was just another evening of banter. To Nena it was another piece of her dignity being stripped away. As she quietly moved back to the kitchen, she whispered to herself, "One day they will see me. One day they will know my worth." She had no idea that the very table where she was being mocked would soon become the place where her destiny would begin to change. This was not the first insult, and deep inside, Nena knew it would not be the last. From the very first day she stepped into Obiora's family compound as his wife, she had been greeted not with love but with whispers and sneers. His sisters would laugh at the way she tied her wrapper, saying she looked like a village woman. His mother would shake her head and complain that Obiora should have married a woman with more polish, someone with class who could walk into any gathering and command respect. Even Obiora himself joined in, telling her more than once that she was too ordinary for his rising status. At first, Nena tried to win their approval. She stayed up late into the night learning new recipes, just to hear a word of praise. She saved little money here and there to buy fabrics she thought would please them, but when she wore them, they would still laugh and say she did not know how to carry herself like a true society woman. Nothing she did ever seemed good enough. Slowly, the bright hope she carried into her marriage began to dim. Obiora made sure she never forgot her supposed failures. If she cooked a meal, he would complain it wasn't seasoned like the food from fancy restaurants. If she tried to speak when his friends were around, he would cut her short, embarrassed to let her voice be heard. He wanted her to remain silent, to be only a shadow behind him while he showed off his success. But what hurt most was that she had married him with a pure heart. She believed in love, in building a home together, in standing beside him through struggles and victories. Instead, what she found was a house where she was mocked daily, where she lived like a stranger among people who should have been her own family. Yet, even in the middle of her pain, Nena held on to a quiet strength. She told herself, "Life is bigger than this. One day, I will be seen for who I truly am." She had no idea how close that day was. Obiora had been restless for weeks, talking about nothing else but the dinner that could change his life. As a young contractor trying to climb into the league of the rich and powerful, he had finally caught the attention of Chief Adekunle Ajay. a billionaire tycoon known all over the country for his massive land deals and business empire. To Obiora, this was the biggest chance of his career, a door that could lift him into the circle of wealth and influence he craved so badly. He planned every detail of the dinner like it was a royal event. He boasted to his friends that once Chief Atakunal signed the papers, he would no longer sit with small men. He hired extra staff to clean the compound, ordered expensive wine, and even borrowed new dining chairs from a cousin just to make the house look more impressive. Every corner of the house was polished, and he kept rehearsing what he would say to his guests to sound smart and important. But in all his planning, Obiora did not once think about Nena's feelings. He only saw her as part of the arrangement, the woman who would cook and serve while he entertained. To him, she was not a partner in his dream but just another tool to make the evening run smoothly. He didn't even notice the quiet pain on her face as she prepared the meals, nor the way she worked tirelessly, making sure everything would be perfect. For Nena, the dinner felt like another stage where her humiliation would be displayed. She knew how Obiora always found a way to mock her in front of people, and now the thought of him doing it before such an important man made her chest tighten. Still she said nothing. She only prayed silently that God would help her endure the night. Neither of them knew that this dinner would be more than just business. It would become the turning point of their lives. A night that would expose Obiora's pride and reveal the hidden jewel he never valued. Just hours before the guests arrived, Obiora cornered Nena in the kitchen. His voice was sharp and low, but every word struck her like thunder. "Don't embarrass me tonight," he hissed, glaring at her. "Speak less. Just serve the food and keep quiet. Do you understand? Important people don't want to hear your village talk." Nena stood frozen, holding a pot of steaming soup, her hands trembling slightly. She wanted to ask why he always spoke to her that way, why he couldn't see the effort she had poured into the evening, but her lips refused to open. Instead, she simply nodded, swallowing the pain that rose in her throat. Inside, it felt as if a knife had been twisted into her chest. She had spent the whole day cooking, pounding yam until her arms ached, preparing rich vegetable soup, roasting fish and setting the table with care. She thought maybe if she did everything perfectly, he would smile and feel proud of her. But instead, he only reminded her of how little he valued her presence. As she adjusted her wrapper and smoothed her head tie in the mirror, she whispered softly to herself, "You will be strong tonight. You will not let them see your tears." Her reflection looked back at her, eyes tired but still carrying a quiet strength she did not even recognize yet. Meanwhile, Obiora paced about, rehearsing his jokes and stories, determined to impress Chief Atakunal with his charm. To him, Nena was nothing but the background, the silent figure who would serve the food and disappear. He wanted to hide her light because he was too blind to see it. But destiny has its own way of uncovering what men try to cover. That very night, the same woman Obiora tried to silence would be the one who captured the attention and respect of the richest man he had ever met. That evening, just as the sun began to set and the streetlights flickered on in Onitsha, the compound came alive with movement. Sleek black cars rolled in one after another, their polished bodies shining under the dim glow. Neighbors peeked through their windows and whispered, for it was clear that someone important had arrived. The moment Chief Atakunal Ajayi stepped out, the atmosphere shifted. He wore a flowing white agbada, richly embroidered, with a cap that matched perfectly. Gold accessories glimmered on his wrist and fingers, but more than his wealth, it was his aura that filled the space. He carried himself with the confidence of a man who was used to respect, a man whose presence alone could silence a noisy room. Even the air seemed to pause for him. Obiora rushed forward, almost bowing as he stretched his arms in welcome. "Chief, you honor my humble home," he said with the widest smile he had worn all year. His voice was almost trembling with excitement. He quickly introduced his friends, each one standing to greet the billionaire like schoolboys in front of their headmaster. The compound buzzed with activity as the chief was ushered inside. The furniture gleamed, the scent of rich soup filled the air, and the men sat straighter, careful not to make any mistake in front of such a powerful guest. Nena quietly walked in carrying a tray of drinks. Her wrapper was neatly tied, her geli simple yet graceful, her steps calm and steady. She kept her eyes lowered, but she could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Everyone's attention was on Chief Atakunal, everyone except Obiora who, in his pride, wanted the night to revolve around him alone. But as Chief Atakunnal's eyes swept across the room, they lingered, just for a second, on the woman moving silently in the background. It was not her clothes or her jewelry that caught his attention, but the quiet dignity she carried, the unspoken grace that no amount of laughter or insult could erase. As the night went on, laughter and loud voices filled the dining room. Glasses clinked, plates scraped, and Obiora's voice rose above all others as he bragged about his projects and connections. But while the men were busy boasting and showing off, Chief Atakunnal's eyes quietly followed Nena. She moved from one side of the table to the other, serving dishes with steady hands. Every step she took was calm. Every gesture carried a certain grace that spoke louder than words. She never interrupted, never forced herself into the spotlight, yet there was something commanding about her silence. Her smile was small, almost shy, but it carried a warmth that no one else seemed to notice. No one except Atakunnal. Unlike Obiora, who saw her as ordinary, Atakunnal saw something different. He noticed the intelligence hidden in her eyes, the way she listened carefully, the gentleness with which she handled even the smallest detail. There was no rush in her movements, no pretension, only humility wrapped in quiet strength. For a moment, as she leaned to place a bowl of soup before him, their eyes met. It was brief, almost accidental, but in that instant Atakunnal felt a spark, an unspoken truth that this woman was far more than the role she was being forced to play. Obiora, busy trying to impress with stories, never realized the silent exchange happening right in front of him. He laughed loudly, waved his hands dramatically, and spoke as though the night belonged to him. But Atakunnal's mind was not on Obiora's words. His thoughts lingered on the woman who had been mocked, the one moving quietly in the background, carrying herself with the kind of dignity that no insult could erase. In that silence, Atakunnal began to see what Obiora had been too blind to recognize. Nena was not just a wife in the shadows. She was a jewel hidden in plain sight. The evening seemed to be going well for Obiora. He laughed louder than anyone else, cracked jokes even when no one asked, and kept refilling Chief Atakunnal's glass as though the more he poured, the more deals he would secure. The men nodded along, pretending to enjoy his endless stories, but Obiora wanted more. He wanted to appear powerful, confident, and in total control of his home. Then, in a moment of arrogance, he turned the spotlight toward Nena. She had just walked in with another tray of food, her steps steady, her eyes lowered in humility. Without thinking, Obiora smirked and said, "Don't mind her, Chief. She's not wife material. I only keep her here to cook and clean." The words dropped like a heavy stone in the middle of the room. For a second the noise died. Forks paused halfway to mouths, conversations froze, and even the air seemed to hold its breath. Chief Atakunnal's brow lifted slightly, his eyes shifting from Obiora to Nena. Nena's heart clenched, but she forced her face to remain calm. She stood still, clutching the tray tightly so it wouldn't slip from her shaking hands. Her ears burned from the sting of humiliation, but she swallowed her pain, refusing to let the tears fall in front of them. Some of the men chuckled nervously, their laughter weaker this time, as though they too felt Obiora had gone too far. But Obiora laughed even harder, puffing up his chest, thinking he had made himself look bold. Chief Atakunnal, however, did not laugh. His gaze lingered on Nena with quiet curiosity. He saw the way she carried herself despite the cruel words, the way she held her dignity like a shield even while standing in shame. In that heavy silence something shifted. What Obiora meant to use as a joke became the very moment that revealed his blindness, and opened another man's eyes to the hidden worth of the woman he had mocked. The laughter in the room faded into an awkward silence. Obiora expected Chief Atakunnal to laugh along with him, to nod in agreement at his cruel joke. But instead, the older man leaned back in his chair, eyes steady, and cleared his throat. His deep voice cut through the tension, calm but commanding. "Madam," he said gently, turning his attention fully toward Nena, "what do you do?" For a moment Nena froze. No one had ever asked her that in front of Obiora's friends, not even Obiora himself. Her fingers tightened around the tray she was holding, and she lowered her gaze, unsure if she should even answer. But there was something in the chief's tone, respect, not mockery, that gave her courage. In a soft voice she replied, "I studied accounting, sir. I worked briefly before marriage, but I left my job when I became a wife. Still, I dream of starting my own firm one day, to help small businesses manage their finances and grow. The room went still again, but this time for a different reason. A flicker of surprise passed across a few faces. They had never heard her speak this way, clear, intelligent, full of quiet ambition. Even Obiora shifted uncomfortably in his seat, not expecting her to speak with such confidence. Chief Adekunle's eyes lit up with interest. He leaned forward slightly, a small smile playing on his lips. "That is impressive," he said warmly. "A woman with vision is worth more than gold. The world needs women who can lead with both wisdom and humility." Nena's heart swelled. For the first time in a long while she felt seen, not as a shadow in her husband's house, not as the butt of his jokes, but as a woman with dreams and value. Obiora forced a laugh, trying to wave it off. "Ah, Chief, don't mind her. She just talks." But Adekunle's gaze never left Nena. In that moment the seed of respect had been planted, one that would soon grow into something far greater than Obiora could ever imagine. Chief Adekunle leaned forward, his eyes still fixed on Nena as though he had discovered something rare. His voice softened, carrying warmth that filled the room. "You have a sharp mind," he said with certainty, nodding slowly. "The world needs women like you in leadership, women who see beyond today, who have dreams bigger than the four walls around them." For a moment, Nena could hardly breathe. She had lived years being told she was nothing, being treated like her thoughts and ambitions had no place in the world. Yet here was a man of great stature, a man her husband admired and feared, speaking words that lifted her spirit like wings. Her heart swelled, her throat tightened, and she felt a tear threaten to fall, but she quickly blinked it away. The room was unusually quiet. Some of the guests shifted in their seats, stealing glances between the chief and Nena. It was as if they too had just noticed her for the very first time. Even Obiora's laughter died down. His smile faltered as he realized that the man he desperately wanted to impress was more interested in the woman he had spent years belittling. Nena bowed her head slightly, her voice trembling but clear. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. "It means more than I can say." Adekunle's smile deepened, and he raised his glass. "To women of vision," he said. Some of the men awkwardly raised their glasses too, though none matched the conviction in his tone. Obiora forced a laugh and tried to shift the attention back to himself, launching into another story about his latest project. But the air in the room had already changed. A new respect now lingered, and it wasn't for him. It was for the woman he had tried so hard to hide, the one he had mocked just moments earlier. For the first time in a long time, Nena's heart whispered a different truth. She was not invisible, and she was not worthless. Someone had finally seen her light, and that spark of respect was the beginning of a fire that would change. Weeks passed after that dinner, but the memory of Nena never left Chief Adekunle's mind. While Obiora believed he had impressed the tycoon with his bold talk, the truth was different. Adekunle kept remembering the quiet dignity of the woman in the background, the humility in her smile, and the brilliance in her words. He had attended countless dinners with wealthy men and their wives, but rarely had he met a woman who carried both intelligence and grace so effortlessly. One afternoon, Obiora received a call. Chief Adekunle wanted to see him for a very important meeting. Excitement surged through him. He dressed in his finest suit, polished his shoes until they shone, and rehearsed once again the speech he would give to secure the long-awaited land deal. His chest swelled with pride as he told himself that his hard work was finally paying off. When he arrived at Adekunle's office, the atmosphere was formal yet calm. Obiora sat eagerly, waiting for documents to be brought out. Instead, Adekunle leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "Obiora," he began slowly, "I respect your ambition, but there is something personal I must tell you." Obiora straightened, his heart racing. He expected good news. Instead, Adekunle's next words shattered his world. "From the moment I met your wife, I knew she was special. She is not the woman you mocked her to be. She is a woman of value, dignity, and vision. And I will not hide my feelings. I have fallen in love with Nena, and I intend to make her my wife." Obiora's mouth fell open. The room spun around him. He could not believe what he had just heard. His richest client, the man he had desperately tried to impress, was speaking about the very woman he had ridiculed as not wife material. The words echoed in his ears like thunder. The deal he wanted vanished from his thoughts. In its place was a crushing realization. The jewel he had trampled was now being desired by a man greater than him in every way. Obiora sat frozen, his palms sweating as Adekunle's words sank in. His richest client, the man whose approval he had chased for months, was now boldly declaring love for the woman he had despised. It felt like the walls of the office were closing in on him. His ears rang and his mouth went dry. For years he had mocked Nena, calling her useless, ordinary, unworthy of respect. Now that same woman had become the desire of the very man Obiora wanted to impress most. He tried to laugh, but the sound came out broken. "Chief, you cannot be serious," he stammered, his voice trembling. "That woman? Nena? She's nothing." Chief Adekunle's eyes hardened. "Careful, Obiora. The more you speak, the more you reveal your blindness. You have a rare treasure and you could not see it. You threw insults where you should have given honor. And now you are surprised that another man recognizes her worth." Obiora's chest tightened. Beads of sweat rolled down his face. In that moment he realized he was losing everything at once: the business deal, his dignity, and the wife he had never valued. He thought of all the nights he mocked her, all the times he silenced her, all the laughter he enjoyed at her expense. Every memory now came back like a whip across his soul. For the first time Obiora felt powerless. He had built his pride on wealth and connections, yet none of it could save him from the humiliation of this moment. His heart pounded as he saw his empire of arrogance collapsing brick by brick. Back in his home, Nena had once whispered, "One day they will see me." He had laughed then. But now he was living that day, the day when her value stood tall before him, while he shrank into the shadows of his own scorn. Obiora lowered his head into his hands, trembling with defeat. The woman he mocked as not wife material had become the bride every man would honor, and he was left with nothing but regret. When the truth finally came out and everything could no longer be hidden, Nena stood before Obiora, her heart heavy yet steady. For years she had swallowed insults, endured shame, and carried the weight of being unwanted. But this moment was different. Her tears did not flow from weakness. They were tears of dignity, of a woman who had been broken but had found her strength again. Obiora, desperate and shaken, tried to plead with her. "Nena, you cannot leave me like this. Forget what Chief said. You are my wife. You belong here." His voice cracked, but the same arrogance still lingered in his tone. Nena lifted her eyes, meeting his gaze with a calmness that pierced deeper than anger ever could. "You never saw me," she said softly, yet her words struck like thunder. "From the day I entered your house, you chose to mock me, to belittle me, to turn me into a shadow. You threw away a jewel because you only saw dust." Obiora's lips trembled, but no words came. His chest rose and fell heavily as he realized she was no longer the quiet woman he could silence. Nena turned slowly, her steps graceful, her head held high. For the first time in years she did not walk with the weight of shame. She walked with freedom. Every movement of her wrapper, every sway of her geli, spoke of a woman who had discovered her worth. The same friends who had once laughed at her now watched in stunned silence. She did not scream. She did not curse. She simply walked away, leaving behind the man who had treated her as nothing. Behind her lay years of pain. Ahead of her stretched a new life, filled with honor and possibility. And as the door closed behind her, Obiora collapsed into his chair, realizing too late that the woman he had mocked as worthless was the very crown he had carelessly thrown away. The wedding day arrived like a festival that swept through Onitsha. The streets buzzed with excitement, drums beat in the distance, and colorful canopies lined the compound of Chief Adekunle. Guests poured in: politicians, business tycoons, traditional rulers, and ordinary townspeople who wanted to witness the union that had become the talk of the city. Everywhere, people whispered her name with admiration. Nena. She stepped out dressed like a queen. Her wrapper was woven with gold threads, her blouse sparkling with delicate beads, and her geli rose high, wrapped in perfect folds. Jewelry glimmered on her neck and wrists, but none of it outshone the glow on her face. She no longer walked with her eyes lowered. She walked with the poise of a woman who had discovered her worth. As she entered the grand hall, dignitaries stood in respect. Women clapped and ululated. Men nodded with approval. And even the younger girls looked at her with awe. She was not seen as just a bride. She was a testimony, a living story of resilience and dignity. The same woman once mocked for being not wife material now stood in royal honor. chosen by one of the wealthiest men in the land. Chief Atakunal, tall in his regal agbada, stood beside her proudly. His hand never left hers, and his eyes glowed with admiration, not just for her beauty but for her strength. "Today," he announced to the crowd, "I marry not just a wife, but a woman of wisdom, patience, and vision." The hall erupted in cheers, and Nena's heart swelled with gratitude. In the corner, whispers carried tales of Obiora, how he had lost the jewel he never valued. But Nena did not look back. She had no need to. Her past pain had transformed into a crown, and her tears had turned into jewels that now adorned her soul. That day, Onitsha celebrated not only a wedding but the rise of a woman who had been trampled and mocked, yet rose higher than anyone ever imagined. Nena had become the bride of honor, a symbol of destiny. In every corner of Onitsha, people could not stop talking about Nena's story. In the markets, women told it while weighing tomatoes. In barbershops, men shook their heads as they repeated it. Even schoolchildren whispered it to one another with wide eyes. They spoke of the young wife who was mocked and shamed by her husband Obiora, who once told her she was not wife material. They remembered how he laughed at her in front of his friends and even before his powerful client. But they also remembered how, in the very same moment, fate turned the story around. Nena, who had been treated like nothing, was seen by Chief Atakunal as everything. A woman of grace, intelligence, and rare dignity. What her husband had trampled on, another man treasured. Soon, the whole city watched as she transformed from a ridiculed wife into the honored bride of a billionaire, her name rising higher than Obiora's wealth or ambition ever could. To many, her story became more than gossip. It became a lesson. They called it a tale of destiny, a living proof that patience, pain, and dignity never go unrewarded. People said it was poetic justice. Obiora lost not only a deal but the very jewel he failed to value, while Nena gained the honor, respect, and love she always deserved. And so, her story spread like wildfire across Onitsha, reminding everyone that the stone rejected by the builder can truly become the cornerstone.